G'day Jafffa Adventures, Terry King here. Welcome to the channel. This video is what I would call a filler video. You're not going to learn anything that you don't already know. This is strictly for mindless entertainment value. If that is not what you're into, shoof off and you can catch us at another vid. So I had ROH octagon rims on the Cruiser. I've replaced them for these ROH, I think they're called Rock 5s. And I think the reason they're called Rock 5s is because it's a 5-stud pattern. There's a Rock 6, I think, which has got a 6-stud. The reason I swapped them out was I was just getting a little bit bored of those octagons, and I had to replace my Toyo tires as well. They were pretty much cactus. I need a good set of tires because in about 3 weeks' time, I'm heading up to the Flinders Ranges with the Jafffa crew, and we're going to be checking out some of the high country there. And then a week after that, I'm setting off with a couple of the young scooters, and we're going to go across the Simo, up the Tanami, into the Kimberley, and down the Canning. And that trip will take me 2 months. I do not want to be stranded out there with shoddy tires. That was the reason I replaced my old Toyos with these new Toyos. So you want some mindless entertainment? Stick around. So what am I actually going to do? Simply, I'm going to pull these tires off and I'm going to paint up those rear hubs. Have a look at them. They certainly look a little bit how you going compared to the brand new rims. Now I'll pull the brake calipers off. Got my caliper off. I washed the car yesterday, and typically what I do is I run it up and down the driveway a little bit just to dry the brakes out, which I did. You can see that the rotor doesn't have any surface rust on it, except for right there, and that's where it sat overnight, and the pads were still obviously a little bit wet. So if you can dry your brakes out before you park it up, you'll save yourself just that little bit of surface rust. Okay, let me pull the passenger side rotor off. Some of you guys have been asking me, hey, what's happening with the FJ45? Well, I've given the vehicle to McKinnon's Cruisers to do a little bit of work that is outside of my pay grade, but I am here doing body work on it. These doors here were full of rust and cancer, and I patched them up, and they're looking pretty good. I gotta throw a guide coat down on that and sand them down to make sure that they're flat, but I'm pretty happy with how they've turned out. After the doors, I'm onto the roof, and I got some holes in the roof that need repairing. But that's for a video for another day. Time to pull that caliper off. I'll clean the rust out of the brake shoe drum here as well. Not going to be doing any painting there, but heck, while I'm here, why not? Okay, that looks pretty good. These are the DBA rotors and pads that I put on this car now. Oh, it'd be 40,000 kilometers ago anyway. And they're holding up really well. And I've taken them through some pretty nasty places. This is just a bit of brake clean, take any grease off that might be on there. And then after I tape them up, but before I paint them, I'll hit them with wax and grease remover. Okay, time to move on to the front. Okay, now time to take the front calipers off. Pop them off so I can get the rotor off and get it wire wheeled. Those rotors have absolutely worn brilliantly for the amount of kilometers that I've done. No grooves in them at all, just the wear ring along the outside edge. I got a video in the 200 series maintenance playlist where I put these DBA brakes on, and when these wear out, I'm definitely going to go DBAs again. I rate them. I mark a little P on here for the passenger side. Okay, time to pull the driver's side off. All right, that concludes our 4 brake rotors. Now we got 4 hubs to deal with on the truck itself. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape these threads up because I've gotta clean this hub, and if I can keep the shit out of the threads, that would be my preference. The tricky bit, of course, is going to be not chewing the shit out of this tape when I'm hitting this hub with the wire wheel. We'll see how that goes. Okay, wish me luck. I've got this little wheel. I wonder whether I can get that in there. Looks like I still got Tassie swamp grass in the backing plates of the brakes here too. These front hubs you can't actually see behind the tires. So this bit of painting that I'm doing here is only because I'll have the paint mixed up. And if I can stop a little bit of rust here on these front hubs for a little bit longer, I'll do it. That'll do, donkey. My theory on keeping these threads clean with a bit of tape while I am wire wheeling this fell to pieces when I chewed all the tape off of the other side on the rear. So I'm just gonna clean it up as is, then I'll clean the threads up afterwards. Okay, now I'm gonna tape up these rotors so I don't get any paint on the brake surfaces. I could hit this surface with a bit of oil and then spray it, and then obviously the paint wouldn't stick to the oily surface. But then I've got to go ahead and clean the brake surface off again, and the oil could sit in these grooves and may be difficult to get out. So I prefer to keep things dry and oil-free, hence the tape. There we go, that's all taped up. And now I'll just run my Stanley knife along this groove. I'll pull out the center bit. Okay. That is nearly ready to spray. The rear rotors do exactly the same thing. All right, that rear rotor's done. I'll tape up the other one and we're ready to spray. Okay, got everything finished taping up. Now to just hit everything with wax and grease remover before we move on to paint. Same thing with my hubs. Wax and grease remove all of those. Now I could spray this with a rattle can, which would probably last all of about a fortnight, but I do have some 2-pack matte black on the shelf, and this is a 2-pack epoxy paint. So this will last a whole heck of a lot longer than the old rattle cans will. All right, this stuff's mixed at a 2:1 ratio. There's 2:1 on our little cup. Top him up with hardener. Beautiful. Mix that little sucker up. And I'll give it a splash of thinners as well, because I'm going to be spraying this through a gun with a really, really small tip. And if it's too thick with that gun with that small tip, it just clogs the tip up. So this should get me good coverage and not block my gun up. I'm letting it drip off the end of this stirrer just to see the viscosity. If you do this enough, you kind of learn what the right viscosity is just by having a look at it off the end of your stir stick. That looks pretty good to me. Here's my little baby gun here. Now normally I'd be putting this through a filter, but 1, I don't have any, and 2, I'm spraying brake parts. We're not talking about criticality here, are we? All right, I got a little cardboard cutout here so I don't spray the brake parts. Just checking my gun settings here. All right, we are good to go. Okay, I'll let that flash off. We'll come back and we'll do a second coat a bit later. The fronts are very much same as the rears. All right, all my painting is done. That cardboard worked a treat. Backs look good too. No overspray on our brakes. Nice even coating, so that should keep the rust at bay for a little while anyway. And our rotors look the part as well. They're still wet, which means they're shiny, but as that paint flashes off, that shininess will turn dull and they'll matte out. Matte out. Is matte outing a thing? All right, I'll let that paint flash overnight and we'll reassemble tomorrow morning. See ya. All right, the funnest part of the whole job, pulling tape off. And I don't mean that facetiously. I actually like it. Putting tape on, not so fun. Pulling tape off, very good. That turned out pretty bloody good. I'm happy with that. And how's our front look? Pretty good as well. Pulling tape off is fun until that happens. That's better. Sweet. There, wasn't that therapeutic? It was for me. Time to get these back on there. Now, while I'm in here, it makes sense to adjust up my handbrakes. What you're looking for is that little star wheel with your screwdriver. And it's not directly 180 degrees, it's offset by another 10 degrees or so. I've got my little star wheel, I'm just spinning it until the shoes tighten up against the drum. That's tight. And now I'll back it off a bee's dick, just so that I've got a little bit of drag there. Because as soon as you use that handbrake for the very first time, that drag will disappear. Now I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna start hating on me for not painting these calipers, because you can see those through the spokes in the rim. But to paint those properly, I'd have to pull them off of the car, clean them up, paint them with some caliper paint, and then whack them back on. And that's a big job, because then I'll have to bleed the brakes as well. And I just didn't feel like taking that on. Caliper bolt number 1, caliper bolt number 2. Those handbrake shoes are quite sloppy. Locked up, and now we'll back that little wheel off. It's a nice amount of drag. Sweet. On my caliper bolts and on the wheel studs, I like to put a little bit of anti-seize. Don't go too crazy, but just enough to keep the threads a little bit moist and lubricated. Caliper bolt number 1, torqued to FT. Caliper bolt number 2. Caliper bolt 1, caliper bolt 2. Sweet. Caliper bolt 1, FT. Caliper bolt 2, FT. Sweet. I'm gonna try a little experiment. I've got this CMX ceramic coating. I'm gonna spray the inside of these rims with the coating. And the idea behind doing this is just to see whether that'll help me keep the inside of the rims clean from brake dust. Maybe the stuff won't stick to it quite as badly, or if it does stick, maybe it'll wash off, and maybe this will do nothing at all. All right, that ceramic coating is dried or flashed off. So now I'll just buff it with a rag and we'll throw these tires back on. I'm very curious to see whether this makes a difference about how that brake dust sticks to the backs of these rims. My old octagons weren't so bad because although they got the same amount of brake dust, the holes in the front of the rims were quite a bit smaller, so you couldn't see the back of the rims. These holes are quite large and you can see the back of the rim very easily. Beautiful. If you're still watching this video, good for you. You can sit through mindless hours of YouTube with the best of them. Thanks for watching. Bye now.